everyone, welcome back to Holistic Doula Haven. I'm Kiara, a birth and postpartum doula. If you're new here, you can watch the first 2 episodes where I take a deep dive into what a holistic doula does. But this space is all about having informed choices and creating a space of empowerment and beauty during pregnancy and birth and postpartum. So today I'm going to be talking about movement for birth. So specifically prenatal yoga, Pilates, and stretching, and why movement is important in pregnancy and how it can help with labor. So I'll talk about the benefits of movement during pregnancy, how practices like yoga and Pilates can help with body alignment and pain management, the importance of pelvic floor exercises in postpartum healing, and stretches to support flexibility and prevent tension during pregnancy. So whether you're expecting or you're supporting a client through pregnancy, or you just want to learn about how movement impacts the birth process for future babies of yourself, then this episode is for you. So why is movement so important during pregnancy? It's probably one of the most powerful things you can do to support your birth or like leading up to it. It's very overlooked because people assume, oh, you're pregnant, you should rest as much as possible. They're not wrong, but when you get into that space and your body's now using muscles that you didn't use before, you're gonna be so sore. Think about it as if you never worked out a day in your life and then you're like, I'm gonna start, and you decide to just do a power trip of legs. You're gonna feel it in the morning and you're gonna be like, why did I do that? You gotta like warm up your body to those kind of things. You can't just like jump in the deep end and be like, yep, I'm a workout girly now. So when preparing for labor, lots of people just kind of focus on the birth plans and breathing techniques and what their space is going to look like, which is important, but movement is also just as important. So gentle movements throughout the pregnancy that you can do is helping to strengthen your core and pelvic floor muscles, because when it comes to pushing, there is a lot of core movement. Lots of people say push like you're pooping. Actually, no. I recently learned from a pelvic floor therapist that you actually want to push with your core. I don't know what muscles you use when you push when you're pooping, but I don't use my core for that. So using your core for things it just makes things so much smoother and you're not exhausting yourself as much. And then movement throughout pregnancy can reduce common discomfort like back pain and hip tension, because babies sit on those parts, or there's a lot of pressure on those parts, especially because baby sits up here and all of those muscles are below the belly. So it's going to create a lot of tension if you're not properly moving them consistently. And then it can also help to improve the baby's position for birth. When there's more space and things aren't as tight, then the baby has an easier time kind of getting ready. And then it helps to make labor a little bit easier if you practice moving throughout your pregnancy. Then at that point it becomes muscle memory. And with those muscles being warmed up pre-birth, it's kind of like butter. It just kind of flows better. And it does not have to be intense movement. You don't have to like go on a 5K run or stretch for 3 hours. Just little movements here and there. Create a routine to help create space in the body and build strength where it's most needed. So I'll talk about prenatal yoga and strength for flexibility. I love doing yoga. I find it very relaxing and regenerating for me. And it's just very nice for my mental health. I mostly participate in hot yoga. It's not 100% recommended for pregnant women, But that being said, if you participate prior to being pregnant, they say that you can participate during pregnancy, but also like just talk to the yoga teacher. Most of them will say you're good to, but if you need a break, step out of the room. It's not gonna do much damage. You just might get warmer faster than somebody who's not pregnant, which is fine. Just take a break when needed. But yoga helps to focus on gentle stretching and breathing and pelvic floor awareness. Yoga focuses on gentle stretching and breathing and strengthening your core muscles, which is very crucial for labor. Strengthening your pelvic floor, especially because that's the general area where the baby is. And strengthening that area is super, super helpful for preparing for labor. That being said, if you have yet to see a pelvic floor therapist during your pregnancy, even before pregnancy or after, I highly recommend finding one. Because who doesn't want to strengthen their pelvic area? I've seen a pelvic floor therapist. Super great. They give lots of good tips for whatever issues you might be struggling with or just to prevent any issues from occurring. So definitely look into that. If you are from Edmonton, I have a list of different pelvic floor therapists that are good in different parts of the city. So feel free to reach out if you want to see one. And then for different poses for pregnancy to help prepare, good ones include the cat-cow stretch. It helps with spine mobility and relieves lower back pain. I'm not going to do it, but you can look it up. You're like on your hands and knees, and then you're bending your back and arching it. So you can try to visualize that, or you can just look it up. And then hip openers, like the butterfly pose. That one is just like the bottom of your feet are together and your legs are kind of triangled sideways outwards. That creates more space in the pelvis and supports the baby's descent during labor. And it just kind of helps to stretch out your hips a little bit more. I do that one quite frequently since I was a child. My family made fun of me for sitting and sleeping like that. But little did they know, it's helped me tremendously as an adult. So now when I go to the doctor, they're like, wow, your ligaments are perfect. And I'm like, tell that to my parents. Thank you. And then deep squats helps to strengthen the pelvic floor and helps the baby engage in the birth canal. Squats are probably my least favorite thing to ever do. I hate them so much, but I still do them because it helps me in the long run, especially working with kids when I'm constantly on the floor. It's very good for you. So even if you hate it, still do it. Maybe just don't do it as much. And yoga also helps with grounding yourself and calming your nervous system and staying calm during labor, just because it's a nice relaxing way to be in tune with your body. And if you go to like a yoga class, most of them play really nice music and it's just like a calming environment. So that's super good for your mental health. That being said, Pilates and core pelvic stability. Lots of people think that when you're pregnant, you got to cut out the Pilates because a lot of it is core work. If you haven't done Pilates before, that's not to say you can't do it now that you're pregnant. I will say it's very humbling. I do Pilates sometimes. My first class, I was aware it was going to be humbling. I wasn't aware how humbling it would be. It was quite intense. But you can still do Pilates when you're pregnant. Just wherever you go, if you're doing it in a class setting, maybe talk to the instructor first. Let them know, hey, I'm pregnant. Can I still do this? How can I make it better for myself? Or how can I be more mindful to make sure everything's good? Just listen to your body is most likely what they're going to tell you. Or they might tell you, we're going to do this type of stretch. We'll modify it if you're not comfortable doing it or if it's not recommended. But it's really, really beneficial for strengthening your core muscles, and the lower back and pelvis as well. It's super helpful for literally anybody, in my opinion. Um, and you want to be in good health going into labor, but it's also just good throughout the entire pregnancy to be active, because lots of muscles are going to be pushed on and stretched. And you don't want to be sore all the time, that's not fun, especially because pregnancy is still such a big question mark and the doctors are like, well, we don't know, so you can't take anything and you're just gonna have to suffer through it. So if you work those muscles throughout your pregnancy, then it can make things so much easier for you. So some Pilates movements that I know are typically recommended during pregnancy is pelvic tilts. So that's great for relieving your lower back pain if you have it, and strengthening the core. And then side lying lifts, which is self-explanatory. It's exactly what the title is. Helps to stabilize your hips and the glutes as well, because depending on where you're giving birth, you might be laying down or sitting for a long time, and you might be squatting or on your back with your hips kind of elevated, and you don't want to be so exhausted while in that position while trying to push your baby out, just because that's going to just add extra discomfort and you really don't need that. And then modified planks help to build core strength depending on your level of activity prior to being pregnant. Some people go for the full plank. I still can't do full planks. I mean, I can, I just don't like it. So you can just put your knees on the ground. It still engages the same muscles, and if you're pregnant, it's probably going to be slightly more difficult. So, that kind of just lets you know you're working those muscles the way you should be. And Pilates is also good for alignment and helpful for breathing techniques, which are all essential in labor. And you want to make sure that you have all those things prepared prior to going in, because I always hear feedback from everyone who's given birth who I've talked to. They're like, oh, pushing was so hard because my muscles were hurting, or I didn't know how to breathe. I didn't realize that I would have to hold my breath for that long. Everything that I've mentioned so far, everybody's made that as a comment for feedback of I didn't realize that I would need to do all these things. So doing those things before just make it so much easier. And then pelvic floor exercising helps to prepare for birth and recovery. Your pelvis sits right below where the baby is going to be sitting. So that supports in the weight of your baby. Things are being stretched and pushed. So you want that to be aligned and the muscle to be strong when it comes to giving birth and recovering. I've heard from literally every single mom that your bladder just doesn't hold up after birth. I really hope that's not entirely true, for whenever it's my turn. But I know from that, if you work on your pelvic floor, you won't pee your pants every time you giggle or sneeze. So, it's not, when you think of pelvic floor, a lot of people's minds go to, oh, it's just Kegels. It's actually not. Some people need Kegels for their pelvic floor exercises. Some people, they're like, that's actually not going to do anything for the problems that we're targeting here. So seeing a pelvic floor therapist is good for that, because then they'll tell you exactly what your body needs. And having tension in your pelvic floor can actually create more pain during labor. And it can make pushing more difficult. If you have a very tense pelvic floor, it kind of closes things off a little bit. If you think of the pain tension cycle, more tension equals more pain. So focusing on building that strength can help you fully relax, especially if you practice throughout your pregnancy. Then your brain kind of already knows what to do when it gets to that point. And then, especially for after, as I mentioned, lots of people talk about how they pee their pants or trickle a little bit after laughing or sneezing or coughing. And nobody wants that. So I'm not going to suggest any specific movements because, as I said, everybody's body's different, and some people might need one thing and other people it might not work for them. So, again, if you live in this area in Edmonton and you want to see a pelvic floor therapist, even if it's been years since you've given birth, it's still super beneficial. So just let me know and I can give you some that are nearby you or just ones that I know are pretty good. Each woman's body is different. So, as I mentioned before, some exercises will be good for one person but not good for the other person, which is why I just recommend seeing a pelvic floor therapist. I'm not going to recommend any specific movements because I'm not a pelvic floor therapist, and what I suggest might do the opposite for you. And I don't want to get sued. And even if it's been years since you've given birth, pelvic floor therapy is super beneficial for you and your baby. And especially if it's been like, I don't know, 25 years since you've had a baby and you're still peeing your pants, perhaps it's time to go see a pelvic floor therapist. So, like I said, let me know if you're in the Edmonton area and you want to see one or you don't know which ones to go to. I can give you a list and we can get you on the right track to healing your pelvic floor. So the next point we'll talk about is the power of stretching for birth prep. Stretching is very underrated. Lots of people think like, oh, it's just twisting and turning. Not really. There's a lot of stretches that you can do. It helps to open your hips and pelvis, helps to relieve tension literally anywhere in your body. You can hold tension in every single point in your body. It increases the flexibility for labor positions. So, squatting, side lying, there's like hands and knees, but more open. So, opening like your hips kind of helps for it to hurt less. Some of the go-to stretches that I suggest for people in pregnancy is hip circles on a birthing ball, child's pose to focus on deep breathing. Depending on how far along you are in your pregnancy and how big your bump is, you might have to modify child's pose because it's like almost laying on your stomach. So you might have to like lift your hips up a little bit more to compensate for the baby. And then pigeon pose for hip flexibility. I have no idea how to explain pigeon pose, but if you look it up, you'll know it's a little complicated to get into if you haven't done it before. But I love pigeon's pose. It's very nice for the hips, especially if you do a lot of like intense training and you feel sore. Stretching your hips in pigeon pose is super nice. And then leaning forward stretches to encourage optimal fetal positioning. So like touching your toes or leaning side to side kind of thing. Sitting on the floor and like reaching for your toes is super nice as well. Because it doesn't only support like the baby in your body, but it also helps to calm people down and helps to just get things flowing in the right space. And the less tension you feel in your body, the less fear that you will feel. Because with pain comes fear oftentimes. It's hard to avoid panicking when you're in pain. I'd like to say I'm a pretty calm person, but sometimes when I'm in a lot of pain, my mind is like, oh my goodness, what do I do? This is the worst experience of my life. I'm dying. Even if I'm not actually dying. Sometimes it's really hard to get rid of that if I'm super tense. So just try your best to leave all the tenseness and the fear anywhere else. And then the last point I'll make is movement as mind-body connection for birth. It's not just about physically strengthening your body. A lot of it is, but it's also about connecting with your body and building trust in your ability to give birth. I've heard from lots of women who've had babies before, and maybe they're on their second or third, just based on their last birth experiences. They're like, oh, well, my body doesn't know how to do this or do that. And I'm like, no, your body knows exactly what to do. Maybe perhaps there's just something different that we can do this time around to prep and make sure that you're better prepared and your body is a little bit less shocked and holding less tension this time around. Because you kind of have to be in a mindset where each movement it has an intention behind it. And breathing deeply has an intention behind it. So, for example, just everyday breathing. We're not just breathing. We're breathing so that we can actually stay alive, you know? So while you're not consciously thinking about it, your mind knows, okay, I need to take in oxygen and get rid of, what is it? The other gas. I don't know which one it is. I'm not a science person, but you know what I'm talking about. So that we can sustain a healthy body and make sure everything is working smoothly on the inside. So breathing and moving with intention to help soften the discomfort. I've learned from doing lots of yoga that sometimes there are moves that are like more difficult, or you're like this is getting really hard. The softer your face is, the easier the movement is to do. So sometimes when I'm doing yoga, I'll just like close my eyes if I know a movement is like really pushing me and I'm like, I'm about to give up. And I'm like, no, I'll just close my eyes and focus. And it actually really helps me a lot to get through that movement. And then I'm like so much happier because I'm like, I did it. I did not give up. And then you're like essentially training your nervous system for labor. So the more you do it, the better prepared you'll be. So that's why practices like yoga, Pilates, and pelvic floor work are so powerful. And lots of people think that these are only things you should do pre-pregnancy or after. Like yoga, people will think, okay, I'll just do it before, cut it out during pregnancy, and then continue after. And then same with pelvic floor. People think that's only after birth. It's not. It's really good to do all these things during the pregnancy. And then it just allows us to trust our body more, knowing that we did all that we could to help put us in a better mindset and prepare for birth. So that being said, I believe that movement is medicine for the body during pregnancy, and it's one of the best ways that you can prepare to have a more smooth delivery and empowered birth experience. So whether you're incorporating gentle yoga into your own home routine or using Pilates or pelvic floor exercises to help strengthen, you should feel very proud of yourself for doing any of these things. If you haven't started, don't feel bad. You can still start, even if it's just once a week. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be all the time. You still are growing a human being, so you still gotta be mindful of when you need to slow down. But if this episode was one that kind of helped you gain a different perspective on movement and yoga and Pilates in pregnancy and birth, then I'm glad I was able to shed some light for that. If you know somebody who's pregnant and they're already struggling with aches and pains, feel free to send this to them and let them know, like, hey, you can do all these things and your aches and pains might disappear or lessen significantly. Or if you're a doula who's supporting somebody, feel free to let them know these are some things that they can do. But with that being said, I will also go take care of my own body by eating and resting, and I'll see you in the next one. The end.